Hey, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining tonight's webinar. I have somehow shared there we go. We're back here. Thanks so much for joining tonight's webinar. We're going to be talking about Chapter 7 bankruptcy, our favorite subject at Upsolve. And I'm talking about this today because I think that if you are like me a few years back and you're struggling with debt, the Chapter 7 bankruptcy could be your path to a fresh start that could put you back on your feet and help you really realize your American dream. My name is Ben Jackson, for those who don't know me, and I am one of the co-founders of the nonprofit Upsolve. Before we dive in, I want to acknowledge something. Really, honestly, just being here today is a big deal because it can be hard to face your debt. And taking this step, learning about bankruptcy and looking at the options that you have, honestly, is something that I'm really, really proud of you for doing. Because I remember when I was in this position, when I had $60,000 of credit card debt, when I could not pay it off no matter how hard I worked, how ashamed I felt. I was so upset that I had gotten myself into this position, even to the point of being on food stamps, which is something that I never saw for myself. And it took a lot of courage to pull myself out of that hole and to start taking action. So you being here today, this is you taking action, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. So let's talk a little bit about what we are going to talk about today. We're going to look at what bankruptcy is, really at a high level, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. We're going to talk about how you know if you're eligible for bankruptcy or not. We're going to talk about some of the pitfalls that you run across with Chapter 7 bankruptcy. We're going to talk about what Upsolve is as a bankruptcy nonprofit and how it can help you file your bankruptcy application for free. And then we're going to go through some commonly asked questions about bankruptcy. So things that you might be wondering about, that you want to, that we've heard from users, questions that we've had submitted in the past. And because this is a live session, we'll answer questions that you might have about bankruptcy or other debt-related topics in the chat. So as we go, feel free, drop those in the chat. We'll answer them as we can, whether you're on Instagram or YouTube or wherever you're viewing this. Please throw those in the chat, and we will do our best to answer those. So let's get into it. Give me 1 second here. One other thing I forgot to mention, we're going to demo some new features in the Upsolve tool. So if you are considering filing with Upsolve, you'll get a chance to see exactly what that looks like and how you can use it. Okay. All right, so first question, what is Chapter 7 bankruptcy? Chapter 7 bankruptcy at its core is a legal process that allows you to step away from unsecured debt. Now, what's unsecured debt? So unsecured debt is something that isn't tied to property. Secured debt would be like a car loan or a mortgage, right? Like if you don't make your payments, the bank or the creditor can take that thing from you. It's secured by the property. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is for unsecured property. So not things like car loans and mortgages. It's for things like credit cards, personal loans. These are things that are not specifically tied to property, where if you miss your payments, the bank doesn't necessarily have the right to immediately come and take some asset. Now, you can file bankruptcy with a lawyer. It is a lawyer process, a legal process. So you can file with a lawyer. But you don't have to. You can do what's called a pro se filing. That means you file by yourself, and that's totally legal. That is what I did 8 years ago when I filed my bankruptcy. So you absolutely can do this alone, and it can be scary. I remember it being scary when I filed alone, but with help through a platform like Upsolve, we can absolutely make that easier for you. So we're also going to talk about what happens to your credit when you file bankruptcy, so keep that in the back of your mind. So are you eligible for Chapter 7 bankruptcy? It is designed for people who are really, really struggling with their debt. Somebody who has fallen behind, somebody who has collectors calling them, who might, have really no ability to pay their debts. It's generally not for somebody who has the funds to pay off their debts in a settlement. So if you're struggling, if you find yourself falling behind, if you have collectors calling you, it can be a great thing for you. It's designed for people who really need it, as I said. And because of that, you have to pass something called the means test, MEANS, not the mean test. So the means test is something that looks at your assets and it says, okay, is this something that Ben can afford? Will he be able to, can he afford to pay off his debt, or is he really in a tough position? And if you pass the means test, which most people who work with the nonprofit Upsolve do, that means that you should be eligible to file bankruptcy because you don't have, a bunch of extra money that you could pay it, which if you had that money, you wouldn't need to file bankruptcy in the first place. And so that's why most people that work with Upsolve pass it. So when you file bankruptcy, Ultimately, what happens is that debt, if the bankruptcy is approved by the court, that unsecured debt, like your credit cards, personal loans, will go away entirely. You become no longer responsible for that debt. And I remember when that happened to me, that moment was incredible, right? Like my debt that had been just like on my shoulders, weighing on me like a huge burden, was gone. And that can happen for you if you file bankruptcy, if you're eligible for bankruptcy and you get that discharge at the end of the bankruptcy process, which usually takes about 3 to 6 months. Now, when you file, after your debt goes away, you're back to square one. We like to call this a fresh start. But there are some effects that still sort of stick around. For example, you may have a credit hit from your bankruptcy. Now, not everybody does. If you do have really good credit when you file, which, if you're falling behind on payments is not likely, but if you do have really good credit and you file bankruptcy, you may see a hit. Your credit might take a hit. Mine went down, I think it was like 40, 50 points, but then it was back up again within about a year and a half. So you can recover post-bankruptcy, and Upsolve has a lot of articles on our website that will help explain how that could work for you. All right, I see I have a question through in the chat here. All right, so we have a bunch of people on here. Did you qualify for Upsolve? So Jasmine, you said you did not qualify for Upsolve. So there's a few scenarios where you wouldn't qualify for Upsolve support. So there's a question of, are you eligible for bankruptcy? And then there's a question of, are you eligible for Upsolve's assistance with bankruptcy? And generally what that means is that if we think for some reason it wouldn't be safe for you to do this on your own using our tool, we'll say, that we think it might be better for you to work with an attorney. And usually where that happens is if you don't have enough debt, so you have less than $10,000 in unsecured debt, or you own a home, or you're trying to file with a spouse. Because in those instances, the case is a little bit trickier. And we will often say, hey, you should probably talk with a lawyer. And because we do that, we actually have a full network of lawyers that we help you get connected with for free. And so if you are somebody who was trying to file with Upsolve and you were not eligible, or you want to talk to somebody else before you file, you can go to my.upsolve.org/referral, which I'll throw here in the chat. And this can actually help you get a free consultation from a bankruptcy lawyer who can help you with those more complicated bankruptcy cases. I see a couple of other notes in here. Currently in the review stage through Upsolve. I'm loving that we're getting people who are actively working on Upsolve on here. This is great. User here, you might be up. There we go. My connection's back. Sorry about that. I was answering this question here. Thomas A says, I'm currently in the review stage through Upsolve. Glad to see we have people from the Upsolve tool, people who are using the Upsolve tool on this webinar today. So if you're in the review stage, what that means is you've answered all of the questions that are necessary for your forms to be prepared by the tool. Because the way the tool works is it's going to ask you questions like this here. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. What's your first full legal name? You answer those, you move through the various sections of the application, and then ultimately your information gets sent over to our paralegals for review. So when that happens, they will review the answers that you gave. They'll make sure that there's nothing on there that would make it likely that the court would reject your application. They'll ask you questions. So it's really important that you watch your email and watch your in-app notifications for questions from our team at that point. And then once they've gotten all the answers and reviewed the forms, they'll release those to you. You'll then be able to download the forms with instructions on how to file them. Now, that usually takes anywhere from about 1 to 2 weeks. So, Thomas, I'm not sure how long you've been waiting there, but that's typically what it takes. Really glad to hear, Courtney, it's really nice to hear that you've been completing the forms. You're relieved to file. Yeah, it's such a relief. I remember how big of a relief that was for me. Thomas, I see you say you lost the video. I'm sorry for that, guys. I don't know what is happening here with my internet. There might be a little issue. So if you are having any trouble here, let me know, and I will gladly repeat anything that I said that you might have missed. Okay. All right. So I do have a question. I'm unmarried, but I live with my partner. Do I have to give his income for the last 6 months or provide his financials for the last year? Also, he is a 1099 employee. Great question. So when you report income on your bankruptcy forms, you need to report your household income. And there's a lot of definitions of this. It goes by the IRS definition. But at its core, basically what that means is that there's money that you have access to that helps pay your expenses. So if your partner contributes to your, monthly rent, for example, or your monthly grocery bill, or they give you cash to cover expenses, you would consider that portion as part of your income on the bankruptcy forms. But you wouldn't consider the portion of it that you don't have access to, right? Like, let's say you guys keep completely separate bank accounts, and you don't mix those funds at all. They have all of their own money that they spend on their own things that they don't use to pay bills. You have all of yours, etc. That wouldn't be considered part of your income necessarily. And again, that is, going to go by, as I mentioned, the IRS tax category. If you would report it on taxes, usually it's going to count. If you wouldn't, it wouldn't. Great question, Courtney. All right, Thomas, thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry about the video issue there, everybody. Okay, let's jump back into this. So we talked about the means test. We talked a little bit about how you qualify. We talked a little bit about filing without a lawyer. Let's take a little bit of a look now at what the tool actually... Oh, you're welcome, Courtney. I see Jasmine, you have a question about an apartment. My apartment said that they will still file an eviction. Just read this real quick. My apartment said they will still file an eviction even though I provided a petition and case info and dates. They said because I don't have a lawyer, can they do that? So there are different laws around eviction depending upon where you live, Jasmine. So it's possible there's something slightly different in your area. But generally speaking, once you file bankruptcy, there's what's called an automatic stay that gets placed against all creditors, which means that they have to essentially stop all collection activities against you. Eviction is a form of collection activity. So if you file bankruptcy, they can do whatever they want, but the court is likely to reject that case unless there's some sort of special circumstances, which is extremely rare. Like if there was fraud or something like that, that case is going to be stayed or stopped until after your bankruptcy proceedings are done. There isn't a difference in what they can do because you're a pro se filer versus filing with a lawyer. That's definitely not true. Sorry for that situation. That's got to be so stressful dealing with an eviction. How quickly will I receive a case number if I set up installments for my petition filing fee? That is a great question, Renee. I'm actually not totally certain. This might be a jurisdiction by jurisdiction question, so it might be different in every court district. I would actually ask the court clerk. So where you filed your forms, often they'll have a phone number, or you can pop into the court to ask them there, and they should be able to give you an answer to that question. But usually you get a case number within a few days of filing that, often the same day. It really depends on how quickly the court processes the filings. So it's interesting to me that they didn't give you that. I would definitely suggest contacting them. Thomas is saying, I currently live with my parents. I pay the utilities and the other household bills. Do I need to say that I'm receiving money for housing? Yeah, this is a good question. So let me think about the best way to answer this for a second, Thomas. So generally speaking, you would need to report the amount that they're contributing towards your housing as income. So let's say, for example, that you would, estimate renting your room or your space in their home as $1,000 a month. Like that's what it would rent for on the open market. You would include that as $1,000 outside contribution from your parents on your forms when you file. All right, question here. Didn't qualify for Upsolve because my highest debt is my car, but they're still very helpful. Oh, really glad to hear that, Jasmine. Love helping with anything that you all need. I know it's make me sad, honestly, when we can't help with somebody's debt issue. I wish we could help with all of them. We're good at bankruptcy, hopefully going to get good at other things as well. But we need to make sure we keep people safe by only helping in certain instances. So glad we were able to help you with that. Okay, yeah, and if you have any other questions, let me look over at Instagram real quick and see if we've gotten any questions on Instagram. None on there so far. All right, so let me give you a quick overview for those who haven't seen it before of the actual Upsolve tool. So On our website, if you haven't explored on there very much, we have a whole bunch of different articles. You can learn about bankruptcy. You can learn state-by-state guides. So I know I mentioned earlier, things kind of vary on a state-by-state basis. So if you look at your specific state guide, you can see the different rules in your area. We have a common question: can I file bankruptcy online? And a really neat, cool thing that you may not have seen on here. Let me take one of these questions from the chat here. Courtney, I'm going to volunteer your question for a moment. Let me throw it back up on the screen. There we go. So in all of our articles, actually looks like I took it down. Never mind, bad timing. I'll show you in a different capacity. In all of our articles, we're going to have answers to questions like that. So if you Google that question, whose income do I report on my, my bankruptcy filings, and then the word Upsolve, you'll often end up on an article just like this, where you can find answers to those questions. And then if you decide that you want to file bankruptcy and you click on the Explore Free Tool button, you're then going to go into that question and answer tool that I showed you earlier. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And it's going to walk you through, if you're eligible, the various sections of the bankruptcy forms. So entering personal information about yourself, legal affairs and property transfers information. You go through each of these sections. They take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours in total to complete before it goes over for review. Now, as you're doing this, you might have questions, which is why we have this really handy thing in the sidebar that says Ask a Question. And it is going to read what's on the screen. So if you're like, man, I don't know if I need to put in my middle name, and it's going to give you some information about that. Is it necessary to include my middle name, for example? And it's going to allow you to ask questions about what you're seeing there. Now, it's also going to allow you to answer your general questions. So Courtney, you asked this question here. I'm unmarried, but I live with my partner. Do I give his income from the last 6 months, provide financials for the last year? Let's just throw that in here and see what could happen. Because you can always email this address, which I'll put in the chat, help@upsolve.org. You can always email that address, and our support team is happy to help you there. But here we've got a question. An answer. If you live with your partner and share household expenses, you'll generally need to include his income for the last 6 months in your bankruptcy forms. This helps determine your household's financial situation and eligibility for bankruptcy. There you go. Great. But again, it's about sharing household expenses, as I mentioned. If you don't share at all, then it's a different scenario. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Get this one a lot. What happens to your credit when you file bankruptcy? So filing bankruptcy does affect your credit. Some people think that it might not. Some people think that it affects it a lot. It does affect it, as I mentioned. For me, it affected it about 40 to 50 points. Some people, it doesn't affect it at all. And here's the reason for that. And actually, in some instances, some people actually even have a bounce, like a positive bounce. And the reason for that is if you're struggling with debt, often you've been falling behind on your payments. And if you've been falling behind on your payments, that gets reported as a negative mark to the credit bureaus, which then causes your credit score to fall. So if that bad debt goes away when you file bankruptcy, no more negative marks, right? Oftentimes people will see a credit boost in short order right after filing bankruptcy. Now, that bankruptcy does stay in your credit report for about 10 years. But your credit score really can start to rebound right away. You can do things like a credit builder loan. You can do what's called rent reporting, where you actually put your rent payments on your credit report, which is something we have information about on our website as well. And that will actually help boost your credit over time, which is something some people don't know about. So it can be a really useful thing to do. Now, I actually had my credit recover to the point after filing that I was able to get a mortgage and buy a house, which is the house that I live in now, right? Like, never saw that coming when I was driving for Uber and Lyft and not able to make my payments. But yeah, your credit will not take a permanent hit from bankruptcy. Yasmin, I see you're saying you're in Texas. You were scared to file. Everyone said it'd ruin your life. Yeah, Yasmin, that's a really common misunderstanding about bankruptcy. People think that it's financial death, right? Like you file bankruptcy, and that's the end of the road for you. It's absolutely not. For many people, including myself, it's the start of their financial journey. The reason that I'm where I am today, that I'm able to provide for my family, my newborn son, who's just 8 months old just recently, and own a house, is because of bankruptcy. It didn't matter how hard I worked before because my debt payments were more than my income. So I was falling further and further behind, despite the fact that I was working 60 hours a week. And so, I listened to somebody like Dave Ramsey say, work harder, get another job, get out of debt. You can't do that when you're working as hard as you can and not able to make your payments. And so now that I didn't have that debt, working really hard allowed me to save, it allowed me to invest, and it put me in the position where I could actually have the life that I wanted. So had I not filed bankruptcy, that never would have happened. So absolutely, it will not ruin your life. I appreciate you sharing that, Yasmin. A lot of people think the same. You said you ruined your credit when you first went to college. That happens to so many people, right? Like, hey, you're 18. Here's a credit card. You know how to use money wisely, right? Not at all. It's so hard to live in America and not go into debt, even when you're careful, because things are expensive. And I think a lot of people end up in that position, Yasmin. Okay, let's see if I have any questions coming through over here on Instagram. Okay. So somebody's asking, what is Upsolve? Great question. So Upsolve is a nonprofit. We never charge you for anything. Our services are entirely free. We're funded by philanthropy. We're funded by individual donations. And in some instances, if we refer you out to a lawyer for evaluation, those lawyers will pay us a small referral fee. And that's it. We don't push you on referrals. We don't do anything. We keep our services free. Because bankruptcy lawyers can cost $1,500 to $2,000 to help you file, which if you had that, why would you be filing bankruptcy? You wouldn't need to. And so we believe that everybody has a right to bankruptcy. You have a right to access things that can help you restart your financial life. And so we provide that service for free. And you can think of us as like TurboTax for bankruptcy. You ask questions, the answers to those questions go on forms, and then you get those forms so that you can file. Another question here. Courtney, you're saying, yeah, I love this line. I don't feel like that. It's either continue struggling or find a possible solution. Yeah, it might be tough for a little bit, but I think it will all work out. 100%. I love that attitude. It really does. You know, if there's a assumption, a negative assumption that if you're somebody who files bankruptcy, that you're lazy, right? Or you are just going to fall back into debt. And that doesn't happen very often. Like most of the people that I talk to are just like me, or just like you, Courtney, or you, Yasmin. They're working really hard. They're trying to get ahead and they just can't. And so as soon as that debt is gone, that hard work ultimately is able to pay off. All right. How much does it cost to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy? Great question. Let me throw that in the chat so we can get it up on the screen. Great. So a couple fees. The court is going to charge $338 filing fee for you to file. You can often get that waived. It's something that if you are below a certain income level, our tool will actually help you prepare the application for what's called a fee waiver. If you make enough or don't make enough, to pass that, then you can get that $338 fee waived, and filing can ultimately be free for you. Now, you do ultimately have to do a credit counseling course as well. Those usually cost around $50, but they'll also have a fee waiver process as well. So in that instance, you end up, paying, if you pay everything, $338 for the filing fee plus whatever it costs for that course. But if you work with Upsolve, your actual help filling out the forms will be free. Okay, Yasmin, you're saying there's still so much I still don't know what to do. Like my car note is so high, but if I have no car, I can't get to work or my kids to school. I'm a single mom and I don't know what to do. I hear you. So when I was in tons of debt, I was an Uber driver, and that was my biggest concern. I was like, if I file bankruptcy, are they going to take my car? And if they take my car, like I can't work. So how's that going to work for me? And the good thing was, in most instances, you have what are called bankruptcy exemptions, and they'll cover the value of your car. So if you have a loan on that car and you're still current on your payments and you don't own a lot of it, so let's have like $20,000 in equity, let's say, very often that equity that you do have is going to be protected by the bankruptcy exemptions. And as long as you're current on your payments, you can do what's called a reaffirmation and keep that car post bankruptcy. Yeah, it can be really tricky though. Definitely something as you go through our tool, Yasmin, the tool can kind of help you figure out, is this something that's going to be covered, or do I need to maybe sell this car and purchase something less expensive? But many people are able to keep their cars through bankruptcy. What if you lose your job and can't accurately project your income? I'm doing Instacart and estimated $2,000. Thomas, I see myself in you, man. I was doing Instacart, Uber, Lyft also when I filed bankruptcy. So if you lose your job and you can't project your income, do an Instacart estimated 2,000, but I'm unsure if I actually make that much in a month. So when you do the bankruptcy application, it's actually going to walk you through calculating your income based on what you were making in the past. For your income at present, Thomas, you're just going to want to estimate. So, do a rough calculation. Take what you made for the last month, multiply it by 12, use that for your annual income or something like that. Get as close as you can. Because ultimately the court isn't out to get you, right? Like the bankruptcy trustee that you're going to talk with, they're not out to get you either. They're just trying to help you get through this process and make sure that you're not, hiding a bunch of assets or something like that. As long as you're honest and as long as you provide the information they ask for, generally speaking, you're going to be okay. Yasmin, I see you tried, but your credit is bad. They wanted me to trade it in for an older car, but the note would go up $200. Oh man, that stinks. I'm sorry. That would be really hard to handle. You want to sell it, but they said even older cars would raise your note. Be curious what you mean by raise your note. Is this a car, Yasmin, that you're buying through a dealership that you would need to take out a loan for or something else? I'm guessing that's the case, but if you want to answer that in the chat, I'll do my best to answer for you as well. Now I'm seeing another question over here. Will everyone find out that I filed bankruptcy? This is so important. So bankruptcy is public record, right? Like if somebody went and they looked it up, they could potentially find it, but who the heck is going to do that, right? Like I work in bankruptcy and I don't think I can even find the bankruptcy records in every single state. If your friends are doing this, you probably need better friends. And most jobs are never going to do this. It doesn't show up on a conventional background check. You have to do a special background check to find it as part of it. Granted, if you work in like financial services, they're often going to care about it, but most employers don't care about it. And none of your friends and family are going to get a notification. Like there's nothing that they would be able to see unless they were looking for it about your bankruptcy. Excuse me. Courtney, I see if you're giving some comments back here to Yasmin. I have to take a loan. The negative equity is like $15,000. Oof, man. Yeah, really sorry to hear that. That might be an instance, Yasmin, where you potentially let them repossess the car as part of the bankruptcy proceedings, and then you work on buying another car, saving up with cash. I know that's really, really hard. I don't envy you that at all. That really stinks. I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm curious, Yasmin, if you think about it like this. If your other credit card debt or other personal loans or whatever went away, if you didn't have to make payments on those, could you make that car payment? Because in that world, which was the case for me, once that other debt goes away in the bankruptcy, the car loan is no longer a problem. And if you can show that on your documentation when you file, then you may be allowed to reaffirm your current car loan and keep that through bankruptcy. Thomas, I hear you. Let me see what you're saying here. Okay, thank you. This is what I did. Spent years in the insurance industry, but unfortunately it's in rapid decline. Thomas, I feel like you and I have like the same trajectory. I was actually working in insurance back in the day. I started a company that went under, had some issues with a former employer, really, really messy situation. And that was actually how I racked up a lot of my debt. I was struggling with this small business and really just couldn't handle it. And then I ended up out of the insurance industry. So I feel like I've been in the same boat as you, my friend. Yasmin, you're already not paying the other debt. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you in that instance. I wish that I had an easy answer for you. I think it'll get better for you. Like I've worked with a lot of people that are in a really rough situation like this. I've been in really rough situations like this, and there is hope on the other side. And it only gets better when you don't have to deal with that other debt. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about is think about how much space your debt takes up in your head. And when I was struggling with debt, it was all that I thought about, like all the time. And then when it was gone, I didn't necessarily magically have more money and I wasn't magically able to pay, other bills more easily. But just because I didn't have that weight on my back, it made it so much easier to think clearly, to do the work that I had to do, to make good decisions with what I was spending my time and energy on. And I actually ended up, in a much better position because I just didn't have all that stress. And so even if we don't know exactly what to do right now with your car situation, Yasmin, I guarantee you that when that debt goes away, you're going to feel much better, and it's going to be much easier to handle that. And I'm really sorry you're in that position right now. Oh man, yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. See, your life is already getting better. You said you lost your job. You have your final interview tomorrow for a new one. Amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us. I'm really excited to hear from you. Let me know how that goes. Pop onto a webinar next week and let us know how it goes. Um, Definitely sending all good vibes your way, Yasmin. Constant pressure and fear. Yeah, it's so exhausting, isn't it? Like, people don't talk about that, like how much of your mind it takes up. Thomas was a property casualty agent. Been there, my man. Been there. Feel like we would have a lot to talk about. All right, we have time for a couple more questions. If anybody has any they want to put in the chat, happy to answer those. And sorry for the glitch earlier, everybody. I don't know what was going on with my internet. Just decided that it didn't want to work today. Really appreciate you all taking your Monday night here with me. It's such an honor to have a chance to chat with you. Okay, Yasmin, you just want to start over. If I get a temporary car, I would throw this car back at them and save and grow my credit. Yeah, I know. I remember feeling the same way. I was like, I don't want this card. Like, just let me get another car. Yeah, bankruptcy is the fresh start, though. You know, your finances start over. You're back on your feet, and you'll be, in a better car, a car that you're more comfortable with, and can deal with the loan on before you know it. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all for being here. I want to say again, you're not alone in this, as you can see, right? Like, Thomas and I have a really similar story. Thomas is here talking about this. Yasmin is here talking about this. You are not alone in this process. There are more people struggling with debt than ever really talk about it. And this is a place at Upsolve and on these webinars where you can bring those concerns and we can talk through them. You know, I've been where you are myself. Bankruptcy was the first step of my journey to security, and I am so thankful to be where I am today, and I wouldn't be if it wasn't for bankruptcy. And I think that can be the case for you as well. So if you are struggling with debt and you have not already started Upsolve's process, head over to upsolve.org. You'll end up in our free tool that looks like this that'll help walk you through that full application and get you on your way to fresh start. So if you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more like it. And we do webinars like this every Monday night. So if you ever have questions that are just, burning ones that you're wondering about as you think about the different options you have available to you, bring them to the webinar. I'm happy to answer them. And we often have experts on as well, so you don't have to listen to my voice and see my face all the time. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. You're already taking your first step towards a fresh start. Keep